The massive warship floated silently in the darkness of space. Inside the command hall, Queen Vila sat upon her throne and looked at the council members gathered before her. They were the most powerful leaders of the Empire, an ancient civilization that ruled over 300 star systems. Today, they were discussing a small, blue planet called Earth. "The humans control the Kava corridor," said one of the advisors. "We need passage through their space to reach the outer colonies. Without it, our trade routes will suffer." Vila tapped her long fingers against the armrest of her throne. She had pale violet skin and eyes that glowed like twin moons. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders, and a crown of black crystal rested upon her head. She was beautiful in the way a storm was beautiful, dangerous and impossible to ignore. "Then we take it," General said from the side of the room. He was a tall warrior with scars across his face. "The humans are weak. Their technology is primitive. We could conquer their entire planet in 3 rotations." Vila raised her hand and the room fell silent. "War is expensive, General, and unnecessary. The humans are not worth our soldiers' lives." She stood from her throne and walked toward the large window that showed the stars beyond. "There is another way, a political marriage." The council members whispered among themselves. Marriage between species was rare but not unheard of. It was a tool of diplomacy, a way to bind 2 civilizations without bloodshed. "You would marry a human?" asked, his voice full of disgust. "They are barely more than animals. They live short lives. They have no special abilities. They are ordinary in every way." Vila smiled coldly. "That is exactly why this will work. I will take a human husband. He will have no power, no influence, no threat to our throne. The humans will feel honored. They will give us access to the corridor, and I will have a pet to parade at ceremonies." She turned back to face her council. "Find me a suitable candidate, someone with no family, no importance, no ambition, someone completely ordinary." Across the galaxy, on a space station orbiting Mars, a man named was fixing an engine. He was 32 years old with black hair and calm, dark eyes. His hands were covered in grease, and his uniform was old and worn. He worked as a mechanic, spending his days repairing ships that belonged to other people. Was not famous, he was not rich, he had no family left alive and very few friends. To everyone who knew him, he was simply a quiet man who did his job and kept to himself. He never complained. He never caused trouble. He was, by all appearances, completely ordinary. But appearances can be deceiving. A voice called out. Looked up to see his old friend Park Minyu walking toward him. Minyu was younger by a few years, with a bright smile and messy hair. They had grown up together in the same small town in Korea before both of them ended up working in space. "Did you hear the news?" Minyu asked, sitting down on a metal crate. "The Empire wants to make peace with Earth. They are asking for a marriage alliance." Wiped his hands on a rag and said nothing. "They want volunteers," Minyu continued. "Any unmarried human can enter the lottery. Whoever gets picked will marry their queen. Can you imagine? Living in an alien palace, surrounded by all that wealth and power." "Sounds complicated," said quietly. Minyu laughed. "You never want anything, do you? Most people would kill for a chance like this." Looked at his friend for a long moment. Then he said, "Maybe I will volunteer." Minyu's laughter stopped. "Wait, you, seriously?" "Someone has to do it," said. "Might as well be someone with nothing to lose." What did not tell his friend was the real reason. He had heard rumors about the Empire. He knew they looked down on humans. He knew this marriage was not about peace. It was about control, and had spent his entire life hiding what he truly was. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding. Perhaps it was time to protect his people from the inside. 3 months later stood in a massive hall on the ceiling was so high he could barely see it. Thousands of alien nobles filled the room, all of them staring at him like he was an insect. He wore formal clothes that felt strange on his body. His heart was steady. His face showed nothing. Queen Vila walked toward him, her gown flowing behind her like liquid silver. She was even more beautiful in person than in the pictures he had seen, and even more cold. She looked at him the way someone might look at a new piece of furniture. "So you are the human," she said. Her voice was smooth and sharp at the same time. "Yes," replied simply. Vila circled him slowly. "You are smaller than I expected, and quieter. Do you understand what is happening here? You will be my husband in name only. You will have no power, no voice. You will smile when I tell you to smile and disappear when I tell you to disappear. Do you accept these terms?" Met her glowing eyes without fear. "I understand." Something flickered in Vila's expression. She had expected him to be nervous, afraid. Instead, he stood before her like a man who had already accepted his fate long ago. It was strange, almost unsettling. The ceremony began. Priests spoke words in the ancient language. Lights flashed. Music played. The nobles watched with bored expressions, already planning their next political moves. Then it happened. A shadow moved in the crowd. A blade flew through the air, aimed directly at Queen Vila's heart. It was an assassination attempt, planned perfectly to look like an accident. But the blade never reached her. His hand shot out and caught the knife mid-flight. He did not look. He did not flinch. His fingers simply closed around the metal as if he had known it was coming. The room fell silent. Looked at the blade in his hand, then calmly placed it on the ground. "Someone should find the person who threw this," he said quietly. Vila stared at him. Her heart was beating fast for the first time in years. No one could have seen that blade. No one could have moved that fast. Yet this ordinary human had done both without even trying. In the crowd, Minu watched his friend with knowing eyes. For just a moment he had seen it. The flash of silver in his eyes. The sign of what he truly was. The ceremony continued. Vila and were declared married. But as she looked at her new husband, the queen realized something had changed. This man was not what he appeared to be. And for the first time in her long life, she did not know what would happen next. The royal palace on Prime was the largest building had ever seen. It stretched across an entire mountain, with towers that touched the clouds and gardens that glowed with strange alien flowers. Servants moved through the halls like ghosts, never speaking, never looking at him directly. Had been given his own chambers in the East Wing. The rooms were beautiful but cold. No one visited him. No one spoke to him. He was a king in name, but in truth, he was a prisoner wrapped in silk. On his first morning, a servant brought him breakfast. The food was strange. Purple fruits and silver bread and something that looked like meat but tasted like flowers. Ate it all without complaint. He had eaten worse things during his years as a mechanic. Queen Vila did not come to see him. She sent messages through her servants instead. Short commands telling him where to stand during ceremonies, what to wear, and when to remain silent. She was testing him, realized, waiting for him to make a mistake, waiting for him to prove that humans were as foolish as she believed. But did not make mistakes. The court was a dangerous place. Every noble was playing a game of power. They smiled with their mouths but plotted with their eyes. They whispered behind's back, laughing at the human pet their queen had brought home. General was the worst of them. He made no effort to hide his hatred. During the first council meeting attended, the general spoke directly to him for the first time. "Tell me, human," said with a cruel smile, "do you know how many of your kind I have killed? During the border conflicts, I led raids on human colonies. Your people screamed and ran like frightened animals. Is that what you will do when things become difficult? Will you run?" The council members laughed. They expected to cower, to look away in shame. Instead, looked at the general with calm eyes and said, "I do not run." The laughter stopped. Something about the way he spoke made the air feel heavy. Smile faded, but only for a moment. He waved his hand dismissively and turned away. Princess was Queen Vila's younger sister. She had the same violet skin and glowing eyes, but her personality was fiercer. She was a warrior, trained in combat since childhood, and she hated the marriage alliance more than anyone. "You should not be here," she told one evening when they crossed paths in the garden. "My sister made a mistake bringing you into our home. You are a weakness, a vulnerability. Our enemies will use you against us." Looked at the strange flowers around them. Their petals moved even though there was no wind. "Perhaps," he said, "or perhaps I will surprise you." Laughed bitterly. "Humans do not surprise anyone. You are predictable creatures, short-lived and simple." Did not argue. He simply nodded and walked away, leaving the princess confused by his calmness. Weeks passed, spent his time learning. He studied the language, practicing for hours until he could speak it without an accent. He read their history books, memorizing centuries of wars and treaties and political changes. He watched the nobles carefully, learning their names, their alliances, their secrets. The servants began to notice. They whispered that the human king never slept, that he could learn in days what took children years to master, that there was something unusual about him. Queen Vila heard these whispers, and they troubled her. 1 month after the wedding, she finally visited in his chambers. She found him sitting by the window, reading a book written in ancient script, a language that even most nobles could not understand. "Where did you learn to read that?" Vila demanded. Closed the book gently. "I taught myself. In 1 month. I had time." Vila sat down across from him. She studied his face, searching for deception, but found nothing. His expression was as calm as still water. "You are not what I expected," she admitted. "What did you expect?" "A fool, a simple creature I could control." Smiled slightly. It was the first time she had seen him smile. "I am simple," he said. "I want very little: peace, quiet, a chance to be useful." Vila did not believe him. No one was that simple. Everyone wanted power. Everyone had ambition. Yet this human seemed content to sit in his room and read books while the court laughed at him. "There will be a formal dinner tomorrow," Vila said finally. "All the noble houses will attend. You will sit beside me. You will not speak unless spoken to. Do you understand?" "Yes." She left without another word, but she could not stop thinking about him. There was a mystery hidden behind those dark, calm eyes, and Vila hated mysteries. The formal dinner was a test. Every noble family sent their representatives. They came dressed in their finest clothes, dripping with jewels and arrogance. They looked at like he was a stain on the royal table. The food was served on golden plates. Wine flowed freely. Conversations filled the air, but none of them included. He sat quietly beside the queen, eating slowly, watching everything. Then Lord made his move. He was an old noble with skin and cold eyes. He had opposed the marriage from the beginning. Now, he saw a chance to prove that humans were unfit to sit at the royal table. When the servants brought new drinks, Lord made a small gesture. One of his people switched his goblet with another. The new drink contained poison, not enough to kill, but enough to make him sick, enough to humiliate him in front of everyone. Lifted his goblet to drink. Then, without looking, he switched it with Lord's goblet. The movement was so fast, so smooth, that no one saw it happen. Drank his wine calmly. Lord drank his. 30 seconds later, Lord began to choke. The nobles screamed. Servants rushed forward. Doctors were called. But it was too late. The poison worked faster than anyone expected. Lord collapsed on the table, dead. In the chaos that followed, continued eating his meal. His expression never changed. His hands never trembled. Queen Vila watched him with wide eyes. She had seen what happened. She had seen the switch. This human had known about the poison before it was even served. He had moved faster than her eyes could follow, and he had killed a noble lord without spilling a single drop of wine. After the dinner, when they were finally alone, Vila grabbed his arm. "What are you?" she whispered. Looked at her with those calm, dark eyes. "I am your husband," he said simply, "nothing more." But they both knew that was a lie. Something was hiding inside this ordinary human, something powerful, something dangerous. And it was only a matter of time before it revealed itself. 3 months had passed since the wedding. The court had grown quieter around. After Lord's death, fewer nobles dared to insult him openly. They did not know what had happened that night, but they sensed something had changed. The human king was no longer a joke. He was a question mark. Queen Vila found herself watching him more often. During meetings, she would glance at him from the corner of her eye. During dinners, she would study the way he moved, the way he listened. He never missed anything. His eyes tracked every conversation, every gesture, every hidden meaning. It was unnatural. No human should be this aware. But before she could investigate further, a bigger problem arrived. They had been growing stronger for years. They were a group of extremists who believed their race was superior to all others. They hated aliens. They hated the peace treaties. And they especially hated the idea of a human sitting on a throne. On a cold morning, they attacked. The first explosion tore through the eastern gate. Guards flew through the air like broken toys. Fire spread across the gardens, turning the beautiful flowers to ash. Screams filled the palace as servants ran for their lives. Was in his chambers when the attack began. He felt the floor shake beneath his feet. He heard the distant sounds of battle, and he knew, with a certainty that came from deep inside him, that this was no ordinary attack. This was an assassination attempt. He moved quickly through the halls. Servants rushed past him, crying and confused. Soldiers ran toward the fighting, their weapons drawn, walked in the opposite direction, toward the throne room, toward the queen. They had planned well. They had bribed guards. They had disabled communication systems. They had waited for the perfect moment when most of the royal army was away on training exercises. Now, hundreds of armed attackers poured into the palace, killing anyone who stood in their way. General was supposed to bring reinforcements. His soldiers were stationed nearby, but the general did not come. He sat in his command center, watching the attack unfold, a small smile on his face. This was his chance. If the queen died, he would take power. If the human died, even better. Queen Vila fought like the warrior she was. She had been trained since birth. Her blade moved like lightning, cutting down attackers one after another. But there were too many of them. For every enemy she killed, two more appeared. Princess fought beside her sister. The two of them stood back to back, surrounded by soldiers. Their arms were tired. Their bodies were bruised, but they refused to surrender. "Where are the reinforcements?" shouted. "Has betrayed us," Vila replied through gritted teeth. She had suspected the general for years. Now she knew the truth. A massive warrior stepped forward. He was twice the size of a normal, his body covered in armor. He carried a blade as long as a man. He smiled at the queen with cruel satisfaction. "Your reign ends today," he said. "The throne belongs to the pure." He raised his blade to strike. Vila closed her eyes, ready for the end. The blow never came. When she opened her eyes, she saw something impossible, stood between her and the warrior. His hand was raised, palm facing outward. The massive blade had stopped in midair, frozen as if held by an invisible force. The warrior stared in shock. He pushed harder, but the blade would not move. It was like trying to cut through a mountain. Then closed his hand into a fist. The blade shattered into 1,000 pieces. The warrior flew backward, crashing through a stone pillar and crumbling to the ground. He did not get up. The room fell silent. Turned to face the remaining attackers. His eyes had changed. They no longer looked human. They glowed with a silver light that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him. The air around him hummed with energy, visible like heat rising from hot metal. "Leave," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried through the hall like thunder. The soldiers hesitated. They were fanatics, but they were not fools. Whatever this human was, he was not something they could fight. One of them raised his weapon anyway. He was young and stupid and full of hate. Moved. He was too fast to see. One moment he stood by the queen. The next moment he was among the attackers. Bodies flew through the air. Weapons broke like toys. Men screamed and fell without understanding what had hit them. In 30 seconds, it was over. 12 soldiers lay on the ground, unconscious but alive. Stood in the center of the room, not even breathing hard. His silver eyes slowly faded back to their normal dark color. Vila and stared at him in disbelief. "What are you?" Vila whispered. Looked at her with something like sadness in his eyes. "I am what my people have hidden for centuries," he said quietly. "I am what we became to survive." He explained it slowly, carefully, as if revealing a secret he had carried for too long. Humans were not as weak as the galaxy believed. Long ago, when Earth was still young, some humans developed abilities that others did not have. They could move things with their minds. They could sense danger before it happened. They could see into the hearts of others. These abilities were rare. Only a few bloodlines carried them, and Earth's governments had worked hard to keep them secret. They knew that if the galaxy discovered the truth, humans would become targets. They would be hunted, studied, used as weapons. So the psychics hid. They lived ordinary lives. They became farmers and teachers and mechanics. They watched over their people from the shadows, protecting them without anyone knowing. "I was born with this power," said. "I did not choose it, but I chose to use it to protect those I care about." "Why did you volunteer for this marriage?" Vila demanded. "Why come here?" "Because I knew what your empire truly wanted," replied. "Not peace, control. I came to watch, to protect my people from the inside. I never intended to reveal myself." He looked at the bodies on the floor. "But I could not let you die." Stepped forward. Her eyes were wide with shock, but also with something else. Respect. "You saved my sister's life. You saved my life." "Yes." "Why, we have treated you like an animal, like a pet." Smiled gently. "Because cruelty does not deserve cruelty in return, and because I believe that understanding is possible, even between enemies." Vila did not know what to feel. Her entire understanding of humanity had been destroyed in a single moment. If one human could possess such power, what was the entire species capable of? Had she brought a weapon into her home, or an ally? She looked at her husband with new eyes. He was still the same quiet, calm man she had married, but now she saw the weight he carried, the burden of being different, the loneliness of hiding who he truly was. "The general will come soon," said. "He will pretend he was delayed. He will pretend loyalty, but he is your true enemy." "I know," Vila said. "What will you do?" The queen straightened her spine and lifted her chin. Fire burned in her glowing eyes. "I will show him what happens to traitors," she said, "and you will stand beside me." Nodded. For the first time since the wedding, they looked at each other not as strangers, but as partners facing a common enemy. The mask had cracked, the truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same again. General arrived at the palace 2 hours after the attack ended. He came with his soldiers, his face arranged in an expression of concern and loyalty. He knelt before Queen Vila and spoke words of apology. He claimed his forces had been delayed by enemy sabotage. He promised to hunt down every responsible. Vila listened without expression. She knew he was lying. She knew he had planned for her death, but she was not ready to move against him yet. Controlled too much of the military. If she accused him without proof, she would start a civil war. So she smiled and thanked him for his concern. She played the game as she had played it her entire life, but inside she was planning. Stood behind her during the meeting. He watched with knowing eyes. The general avoided looking at him. Whatever had happened during the attack, the reports had been unclear. Knew something strange had occurred, but he did not yet know what. After the meeting ended, Vila retreated to her private chambers. She did not call for, she did not want to see anyone. She needed time to think. The attack had shaken her more than she wanted to admit, not the violence. She had seen violence before. What shook her was the realization that she had been wrong. Wrong about humans, wrong about her husband, wrong about everything she thought she knew. She sat at her desk and activated her personal computer. She entered codes that only the royal family knew. Codes that gave her access to classified files from every corner of the galaxy. She searched for information about Earth. What she found changed everything. The official records described humans as a young species, primitive, unremarkable. They had only discovered space travel a few centuries ago. Their technology was basic. Their military was weak. They were no threat to anyone. But the classified files told a different story. Earth had been visited by alien civilizations long before humans left their planet. Some came to observe. Some came to conquer. But every invasion had failed. The records were incomplete, filled with gaps and mysteries, but the pattern was clear. Something on Earth had stopped every attack. Vila read about the invasion 300 years ago. A fleet of warships had entered Earth's solar system, ready to enslave the entire population. The fleet vanished without a trace. No survivors, no wreckage, just gone. She read about the expedition, a scientific mission sent to study human biology. The scientists reported strange readings, energy signatures they could not explain. Then the mission went silent. When rescue ships arrived, they found the scientists alive but changed. They spoke of beings with silver eyes, beings who could break matter with their thoughts. She read about human soldiers captured in border conflicts. Interrogators reported that some prisoners were impossible to read. Their minds were protected by invisible walls. Some interrogators went mad trying to break through. The evidence was scattered and hidden, buried in files that few people had clearance to see, but it painted a terrifying picture. Humans were not weak. Humans were not primitive. Humans had been pretending. Vila leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. Her hands were trembling. For centuries, the galaxy had treated Earth as a minor inconvenience, a backward planet in a quiet corner of space. They had laughed at human ambitions. They had dismissed human achievements. They had assumed that if war ever came, humans would fall in days. But what if they were wrong? What if Earth had been waiting all along, waiting for the right moment, gathering strength, hiding their true power until they were ready? And now one of them sat in her palace. One of them was her husband. The next morning, Princess found in the garden. He was sitting on a stone bench, watching the sun rise over the distant mountains. He looked peaceful, as if the violence of yesterday had never happened. Sat down beside him. She did not speak for a long time. Finally, she asked the question that had kept her awake all night. "Why did you save us?" Turned to look at her. His eyes were kind despite everything, because it was the right thing to do. "That is not an answer. You could have let us die. You could have taken power for yourself. With your abilities, you could rule this entire empire." "I do not want to rule." "Then what do you want?" Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "I want to build something, not destroy it. I want to show the galaxy that humans are not enemies, that we can live together, that peace is possible." Shook her head. "You are either very wise or very foolish." "Perhaps both." She almost smiled. "My sister is afraid of you. She read the classified files. She knows what your people are capable of. She thinks you might be a threat." "And what do you think?" Considered the question carefully. She thought about the attack, about how it stood against an army without fear, about how he had broken the enemy with power she could not understand, and about how, when it was over, he had shown mercy. He had not killed anyone he did not have to kill. "I think you are dangerous," she said finally, "but I do not think you are evil. I think you are a man carrying a heavy burden, trying to do what is right." Nodded slowly. "That is the kindest thing anyone has said to me since I arrived." They sat in silence as the sun continued to rise. Something had changed between them, not quite friendship but something close, an understanding. Meanwhile, General was not idle. He gathered information about what had happened during the attack. He bribed survivors. He reviewed security recordings. Slowly, piece by piece, he learned the truth about the human king. And when he understood, he smiled. This was better than he had hoped. The queen had brought a monster into her home, an alien with powers that could threaten the entire empire. Could use this. He could spread fear among the nobles. He could turn the council against her. He could make everyone believe that Vila had endangered them all. He sent secret messages to his allies across the empire. He told them about the human weapon. He told them the queen could not be trusted. He prepared the ground for his next move. That night, Vila called to her chambers. She stood by the window, her back to him. The stars beyond were cold and distant. She did not turn around when she spoke. "I know what you are," she said. "I read the files. I know about the invasions that failed. I know about the interrogators who went mad. I know Earth has been hiding something for centuries." "Yes," said simply. "Are there others like you?" "Yes." "How many?" "Enough." Vila finally turned to face him. Her eyes were hard, but beneath the hardness he could see fear. "Why did you really come here? Tell me the truth." He met her gaze without looking away. "I came because I believed war was coming. I came because I wanted to stop it. I thought if I could get close to the center of power, I could find another way, a peaceful way. And if you cannot find peace, then I will protect my people, whatever it takes." The words hung in the air between them. They were not a threat, they were a promise. Vila took a step closer to him. "You could have lied, you could have told me anything. Why tell me the truth?" "Because lies are exhausting," said. "And because I am tired of pretending. You deserve to know what you married. You deserve to make your choice with full knowledge." "What choice?" "Whether to stand with me or against me. Whether to build peace or prepare for war." Vila looked at him for a long time. This strange, quiet human who carried storms inside him. She did not trust him. She was not sure she ever could, but she believed him, and that was enough. "Is moving against us," she said. "He will use your secret as a weapon." "I know." "Then we must strike first." For the first time, they were truly on the same side. Two rulers facing a common enemy. Two people from different worlds, bound together by fate and necessity. The storm was coming, and they would face it together. General made his move on a night without stars. His soldiers moved through the capital city like shadows. They had been planning this for years, waiting for the perfect moment. Now that moment had arrived. The queen was weakened by the attack. The nobles were afraid, and the secret of the human king had given exactly the weapon he needed. He had spent weeks spreading fear. His agents whispered in every corner of the empire. They spoke of the alien monster that Queen Vila had brought into their home. They warned that humans were not what they seemed. They claimed the queen had betrayed her people by marrying such a creature. The nobles believed him. Fear is easy to spread and had been spreading it for a long time. When the council met that night, stood before them with false sorrow on his face. "I bring terrible news," he said. "Our beloved queen has been deceived. The human she married is not ordinary. He is a weapon, a creature with powers that threaten everything we have built. I have evidence that humans possess abilities we cannot match, abilities they have hidden from the galaxy for centuries." The nobles murmured among themselves. Some looked afraid, others looked angry. "What do you suggest?" asked one of the elder counselors. "The human must be executed," said, "and the queen must answer for her choices. She has endangered the empire. She cannot be trusted to lead us." At that moment, Queen Vila entered the chamber. She walked with her head held high, her crown gleaming on her silver hair. Princess walked beside her. They had known would move tonight, had seen it in the general's thoughts, sensing his intentions like ripples on water. "You speak of betrayal," Vila said, her voice cutting through the noise. "But the only traitor in this room is you." The general's false sorrow vanished, replaced by cold anger. "You have no proof." "I have witnesses. Soldiers who saw you hold back your forces during the attack. Servants who overheard your conversations with the enemy. I have proof of every bribe you ever paid, every life you ever sold." For a moment seemed uncertain. Then he smiled. It was a terrible smile, empty of everything except ambition. "It does not matter," he said. "The military follows me. The nobles follow me. Your proof means nothing if no one is willing to listen." He raised his hand and soldiers poured into the chamber. They surrounded the council, weapons drawn. The nobles scrambled away, terrified. Vila and found themselves trapped with enemies on every side. "You could have been a great queen," said, "but you were too weak, too soft. You made peace with lesser species when you should have conquered them. You brought a human into our sacred halls. Now you will pay for your mistakes." Vila drew her blade, drew hers. They stood back to back, ready to fight even though they knew they were outnumbered. Then walked into the chamber. He moved slowly, calmly, as if he were taking a stroll through the garden. The soldiers pointed their weapons at him, but they did not fire. Something about his presence made them hesitate. There was a weight to him, a gravity that pulled at their courage and crushed it. "Let them go," said. "Laughed, or what? You will use your powers. Good. Let everyone see what you are. Let them see the monster their queen has married." Stopped in the center of the room. He looked at the soldiers surrounding him. He looked at the frightened nobles. He looked at Vila and standing brave despite their fear. "I am not a monster," he said quietly, "but I am not powerless either. You have one chance, General. Surrender now and I will speak for mercy. Continue down this path and you will regret it." "Kill him," ordered. The soldiers hesitated. Eyes had begun to glow with silver light. The air around him shimmered like heat rising from hot stone. They could feel something pressing against them, an invisible force that made it hard to breathe. "I said kill him." One soldier found his courage. He raised his weapon and fired. The energy bolt stopped in midair, frozen centimeters from his face. He looked at it with mild curiosity, then flicked his fingers. The bolt flew backward and struck the ceiling, bringing down a shower of debris. Chaos erupted. Soldiers fired from every direction, moved among them like a ghost, deflecting shots with waves of his hand, throwing men aside with invisible force. He did not kill. He did not need to. Every soldier who attacked him found themselves disarmed and on the ground before they could understand what had happened. Vila and fought their way through the confusion, cutting down the enemies who tried to stop them. They reached the communications array, the most important target in the palace. Whoever controlled communications controlled the information, and information was power. Joined them there, barely breathing hard despite the battle raging around him. "We need to contact my people," he said. "There are human ships nearby. If I can reach them, they can help." Vila nodded. She did not ask questions. There was no time. Closed his eyes and focused. His mind reached out across the void of space, searching for familiar presences, searching for the one person he knew would answer. On a small ship orbiting Prime, Park Minu sat up suddenly. His eyes went wide. He could feel call, clear as a voice speaking directly into his mind. "Everyone get ready," Minu said to his crew. "It is time." Back in the palace, had escaped the chaos in the council chamber. He fled to his command center, where his most loyal soldiers waited. His face was twisted with rage. "The human is more powerful than I thought," he admitted, "but I have prepared for this possibility." He activated a control panel and brought up a holographic display. It showed a massive weapon, hidden beneath the mountains near the capital, a planetary cannon capable of destroying entire cities. "If I cannot rule this empire," said, "then I will burn it to the ground, and I will start with Earth." He began entering coordinates. The weapon hummed to life, ancient systems waking after centuries of sleep. It would take time to charge, but when it fired, nothing would survive. Felt the weapon activating. The energy signature was impossible to miss. It was like a scream echoing through the fabric of space. "He is going to fire at Earth," said. Vila's face went pale. That weapon has not been used in over 1,000 years. If it fires, the destruction will be catastrophic. "Can it be stopped?" "Only from the control center. It is too deep underground to destroy from outside." Nodded, "Then I will stop it from inside." Vila grabbed his arm. "You will die, has an army between you and that control center." "Perhaps," looked at her with those calm, steady eyes, "but my people are worth dying for, just as yours are worth fighting for." Before she could respond, he was gone, moving faster than any human should be able to move, disappearing into the darkness of the palace corridors. Vila wanted to follow him. She wanted to fight beside him. But she knew her place was here, leading her people through the chaos. If they both died in that bunker, the empire would fall to pieces. So she turned to her sister, her eyes burning with determination. "Rally everyone who is still loyal," she said. "We end this tonight." Nodded and ran to gather the troops. Far below, descended into the darkness alone. The weight of an entire planet rested on his shoulders, and somewhere ahead, a madman was preparing to burn his home. He did not slow down. He did not hesitate. He simply walked forward into the fire. The underground tunnels were cold and dark, moved through them like a shadow, his silver eyes cutting through the blackness. He could feel the soldiers ahead. Dozens of them, hundreds, had placed his entire personal guard between the control center and anyone who might try to stop him. But was not alone, not truly. Across the void of space he felt them, his brothers and sisters, the other psychics of Earth who had hidden themselves among the stars. They had been waiting for this moment for a long time, waiting for the signal, waiting to reveal themselves. Park Minu's ship broke through the atmosphere of Prime First. It was small and old, nothing impressive to look at. But when the doors opened, the soldiers on the ground stared in disbelief. 20 humans stepped onto the alien soil. They wore no armor. They carried no weapons. Their eyes glowed silver in the dim light. "Impossible," whispered a commander. "There are more of them." Minu smiled. "You have no idea." The psychics spread out across the battlefield. They moved with perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. Forces fired at them, but the energy bolts stopped in midair. Vehicles tried to run them down, but invisible walls blocked every path. Soldiers tried to fight hand to hand, but they were lifted off the ground and set aside like toys. The humans did not kill anyone who did not threaten innocent lives. They were precise and careful, disabling weapons, blocking attacks, creating chaos without creating bodies. It was a display of power unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. High above, the galactic news networks broadcast the images across 1,000 worlds. People watched in shock as the species they had dismissed for centuries demonstrated abilities that matched the most powerful civilizations in existence. Earth was no longer hiding. Earth had awakened. Deep underground felt the tide turning. His people were winning, but the weapon was still charging. He could feel its energy building, ready to unleash destruction on a scale that would make the attack look like a child's game. He ran faster. The first wave of soldiers appeared from a side corridor, raised his hand and pushed. The air itself became a wall, slamming into them and throwing them backward. He stepped over their unconscious bodies and continued forward. The second wave was bigger. A dozen heavily armored warriors with shields designed to resist psychic energy. They had learned from the battle above. They knew what they were facing. It did not matter. Closed his eyes and focused. He reached into the spaces between matter, the invisible forces that held the universe together. The shields meant nothing. The armor meant nothing. He twisted gravity itself, pinning the soldiers to the walls and floor. They screamed and struggled, but they could not move. "Sorry," said quietly as he passed. "This is not personal." The control center was a massive chamber carved from solid rock. Ancient machines covered the walls, blinking with lights that had been sleeping for 1,000 years. In the center, General stood at a control panel, his fingers dancing across the interface. "You are too late," the general said without turning around. "In 3 minutes this weapon will fire, Earth will burn, and your precious peace will die with it." Stopped at the entrance. His body was tired. Using his powers this much, this fast, was draining him, but he could not stop now. "Why?" he asked. "Why destroy an entire planet? These are innocent people, children, families. What did they ever do to you?" Finally turned around. His face was twisted with hatred. "They exist. That is enough. Humans are a disease. You spread across the galaxy, corrupting everything you touch. You take our jobs, you steal our resources. You pollute our bloodlines with your inferior genetics. We just want to live. And we want you dead," slammed his fist on the control panel. "For centuries my people ruled this part of the galaxy. We were masters of all we surveyed. Then you came. You and your clever words, your humble faces, your pathetic pleas for peace. You made us weak. You made our queen forget who she is." Took a step closer. "Vila is stronger than you will ever be. She chose peace because she understood something you never could. The galaxy is big enough for all of us. The galaxy belongs to the strong, and today I will prove that they are the strongest." The weapon hummed louder. 2 minutes remained. Pulled out a blade. It was old, ceremonial, passed down through generations of warriors. "You may have powers," he said, "but I have spent my entire life training to kill. Let us see which one matters more." He attacked with blinding speed. The blade cut through the air like lightning, aiming for his throat. Deflected it with a wave of force, but was already spinning, striking from a different angle. They fought across the chamber, blade against mind, skill against power. Was a master warrior, perhaps the best in the Empire. Every move was perfect, calculated, deadly. He drove backwards, searching for an opening. But did not need to win the fight. He just needed time. 1 minute remained. Reached out with his mind and touched the weapon itself. He felt its ancient heart, the power core that had been waiting for this moment. It was vast and terrible, designed by beings who had vanished long ago. He began to push. Saw what he was doing. "No!" The general lunged forward with desperate fury. Caught the blade with his bare hand. Blood ran down his fingers, but he did not let go. His eyes blazed silver, brighter than ever before. "You called me a monster," said through gritted teeth. "But I am not the one trying to murder billions of innocent people." He pushed harder. The weapon screamed. Warning lights flashed across every surface. The entire mountain began to shake. "What are you doing?" shouted. "Stopping you." The power core overloaded. Energy fed back into itself, creating a loop that could not be sustained. The weapon that had threatened to destroy Earth tore itself apart from the inside. The explosion was contained within the chamber. Ancient safety systems, designed by engineers who understood the danger of their creation, activated and held. The blast threw against the wall, knocking him unconscious. Fell to his knees. Blood dripped from his hand. His body felt empty, drained of everything. But when he looked at the destroyed control panel, he smiled. Earth was safe. Above ground, the battle was ending. Forces, seeing that their leader had fallen and their ultimate weapon had been destroyed, began to surrender. Queen Vila strode through the wreckage, her blade still in her hand, accepting their defeat with cold dignity. Princess found her sister standing over the entrance to the underground tunnels. "Is it over?" asked. "Almost." Vila looked into the darkness below. "He is still down there." "Do you think he survived?" Vila did not answer. She could not answer. All she could do was wait and hope. 20 minutes later emerged from the tunnels. He was bloodied and exhausted, barely able to stand, but he was alive. Minyu ran to his side and helped him walk. The other psychics gathered around, their silver eyes bright with relief and pride. Vila approached them slowly. She looked at for a long moment. Then she did something no one expected. She bowed. "You saved my empire," she said. "You saved my people, and you saved your own. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about all of you." Managed a weak smile. "We are not so different," he said. "We all just want to protect the people we love." Around them, the sun began to rise over Prime. A new day was dawning. A new era was beginning. And for the first time in galactic history, humans stood together as allies. 1 month had passed since the battle that changed everything. The Empire was healing. General sat in chains, awaiting trial for his crimes. His supporters had scattered, some surrendering, others fleeing to distant systems where the law could not reach them. The movement had collapsed without his funding and protection. Queen Vila stood before the Galactic Council on a space station at the center of known civilization. Representatives from 100 species filled the Great Hall, all of them watching her with uncertain eyes. The news of what had happened on Prime had spread across the galaxy. Everyone knew about the humans. Everyone knew about their hidden powers. Everyone was afraid. "I understand your concerns," Vila said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "You have seen what humans are capable of. You wonder if they are a threat. You wonder if you should have destroyed them while you had the chance." The representatives murmured among themselves. Many of them had been thinking exactly that. "But I stand before you today to tell you that you are wrong," Vila continued. "I was wrong too once. I married a human because I thought it would give me power over a weak species. I expected to find a pet. Instead, I found a partner." She gestured toward the entrance, walked into the chamber. He had recovered from his injuries, though he still moved a little stiffly. He wore formal clothes now, not the simple garments of a mechanic. He looked like a king. More importantly, he looked like someone who had earned the right to be one. He stood beside Vila and faced the council. "My name is," he said. "I am human. I possess abilities that my people have hidden for centuries. I understand why that frightens you." The chamber was silent. For a long time, Earth believed that revealing our true nature would make us targets. We thought the galaxy would try to use us as weapons or destroy us before we could become threats. So we hid. We pretended to be ordinary. We let everyone believe we were weak. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But hiding is not living, and fear is not peace. What happened on Prime taught me that. When I had to choose between protecting my secret and protecting innocent lives, the choice was easy. I would make the same choice again." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species he had never seen before. "Humans do not want war. We do not want to conquer. We just want what everyone wants. A chance to live. A chance to build families. A chance to leave something good behind when we are gone. If you give us that chance, we will be the greatest allies you have ever known. If you try to destroy us, you will learn why we survived every attempt before." It was not a threat. It was simply the truth, spoken without anger or pride. The council debated for 3 days. In the end, they voted to accept a new treaty. Humans would no longer be treated as a minor species. They would have a seat on the council. They would have a voice in galactic affairs, and the Empire would stand as their first official ally. When the vote was announced, felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a weight his people had carried for generations. That night there was a celebration on Prime. The palace was filled with music and light. Nobles who had once mocked now approached him with careful respect. Some were still afraid, but others were genuinely curious. They asked questions about Earth, about human culture, about the powers he possessed. Answered every question with patience and honesty. He had learned that fear came from misunderstanding. The best weapon against fear was truth. Princess found him standing alone on a balcony, looking up at the stars. "You look tired," she said. "I am always tired," replied with a small smile. "But it is a good kind of tired, the kind you feel after doing something worthwhile." Stood beside him. In the months since the attack, they had become friends. Real friends, not just allies of convenience. She had learned to see past her prejudices, and he had learned to trust again. "My sister loves you," said suddenly. Was quiet for a moment. "I know." "Do you love her?" He considered the question carefully. His feelings for Vila had changed so much since the wedding. At first, she had been an obstacle, a symbol of everything he was fighting against. Then she had become a mystery, a puzzle he could not solve. Now she was something else entirely, something he had not expected to find in an alien palace on a world so far from home. "Yes," he said finally, "I think I do." Smiled. "Good. She needs someone who can challenge her, someone who is not afraid of her. You are the first person I have ever seen who can do both." Inside the palace, Vila was finishing her duties as hostess. She moved through the crowd with grace and confidence, accepting congratulations and deflecting questions. But her eyes kept drifting toward the balcony where she knew was waiting. When she finally joined him, the celebration continued inside without her. She did not care. She had spent her entire life putting duty before everything else. Tonight, she wanted to be selfish for once. "You spoke well today," she said. "The council was impressed." "I just told the truth. Sometimes that is the hardest thing to do." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the moons rise over the distant mountains. So much had changed since the day they first met. They had started as strangers, forced together by politics and ambition. Now they were partners, bound by something much stronger than any treaty. "I need to ask you something," Vila said, "and I need you to be honest with me." "Always." "Was any of it real? When you first came here, when you played the role of the quiet, simple human, was that all an act?" Turned to face her. His dark eyes reflected the starlight. "The disguise was an act," he admitted. "But the man underneath was always real. I never lied about who I am. I just did not show you everything at first. And now? Now there is nothing left to hide." Vila reached out and took his hand. It was a small gesture, but it meant more than any grand declaration. It meant she had chosen to trust him, completely and without reservation. "Then we will face whatever comes next together," she said. Squeezed her hand gently. "Together." Park Minu found them a few minutes later. He was carrying 3 glasses of some kind of alien drink, his face flushed from the celebration inside. "There you are," he said. "I have been looking everywhere. The party is amazing, by the way. I have never seen so many aliens in one place." Appeared behind him, shaking her head at his enthusiasm. "Your friend talks too much." "That is what friends are for," said. The 4 of them stood together on the balcony, looking out at the stars. A queen and a princess. A psychic king and his loyal companion. They came from different worlds, different histories, different dreams. But in that moment, they were simply 4 people who had found something worth fighting for. "What happens now?" Minu asked. Thought about all the challenges ahead. The prejudices that would take generations to overcome. The enemies who were still out there, waiting for another chance to strike. The hard work of building real understanding between species who had been strangers for so long. "Now we show them what humanity can build," he said, "not just what we can destroy." Vila nodded slowly. "My empire has conquered many worlds. We have taken resources and territory and power, but we have never truly built anything lasting. Perhaps it is time to try something different. Perhaps it is time for all of us to try something different, added. Minyu raised his glass, to new beginnings. They all raised their glasses and drank. Far below in the gardens of the palace, common people from both species walked together, and humans talking and laughing and sharing stories. Some were still nervous, still unsure, but they were trying. That was more than anyone could have hoped for just a few months ago. Watched them with a peaceful expression. He had come to this world expecting to fight. He had found something better instead, a chance to heal old wounds, a chance to build bridges across the void of space, a chance to prove that strength was not measured by the power to destroy, but by the courage to extend a hand in friendship. The stars shone down on Prime. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning on its axis, its people looking up at the same stars. They were no longer alone. They were no longer hiding. For the first time in human history, they had partners among the stars. Smiled and turned back to the celebration. There was still so much work to do, but for tonight, it was enough to stand among friends and look toward the future. A future that belonged to all of them.